So have you heard about the authoritarian thug, criminal piece of shit, threatening to take over, to have a federal takeover of the city of Washington, D.C.? That's what I want to talk about here in this video. By the way, can you help me think of a term to use to refer to this piece of shit? I mean, I guess authoritarian thug criminal piece of shit is an accurate description, but I don't know if I want to use that every single time I talk about this piece of trash. And I don't want to use the word president to refer to him for a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't think he is deserving of the title. I don't think he is worthy of the respect that we have always given in this country to presidents, even when we've had some pretty crappy presidents. He's also constitutionally prohibited, regardless of what our corrupt Supreme Court said, from being president. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment disqualifies Trump from being president. So he is not even a legal president as far as I'm concerned. And again, not worthy of being called president. But beyond that, the president, it means something. In our constitutional system, the powers of the president are prescribed. They're laid out very clearly. And if the president is not empowered specifically by Article 2 of the Constitution to do something, or if he is not specifically authorized by statutes passed by Congress to do something, then he has no authority to do it. And so a president has limited, specifically described powers. He is not abiding by the limits of his powers, and he is exercising powers that a president doesn't rightly have. So he is in no way acting like a president. So to call him president, I think, is almost misleading, because he is not acting as a president. He is not behaving like a president. He is not exercising the powers of a president. A president doesn't have the powers that he's exercising and that he is being allowed to exercise. There are remedies to this. That's part of the problem in this country. We've allowed this to happen. The people voted for it. They elected him. And every single institution, beginning with Congress and the courts, have allowed this piece of shit criminal to remain in power. We let him do it. We let him do it. The Constitution provides the remedy to this. We just refuse to use it. The Congress refuses to use it. Anyway, I don't want to waste any more time on this. If you can think of a more appropriate term for me to use to describe this guy than authoritarian thug criminal piece of shit, then, I'd listen to it. Otherwise, I guess I'll just stick with that. Anyway, you may have heard about this. Trump, going back to, it's Sunday as I'm recording this, and I think on Thursday he made his first threat. He had been talking about this for some time, but he made a very explicit threat to take over the city of Washington, D.C. I think this was specifically in response to the news that, what's the guy's name? Big Balls, one of these Elon Musk former staffers at Doge, called himself Big Balls, some 20-something-year-old fucking punk. Anyway, apparently he came to somebody's aid who was being attacked in Washington, and he was beaten and bloodied, and Trump used that as an excuse to say, hey, I'm going to take over the city of Washington because, it's crime-ridden and all this stuff. Anyway, let me read. I want to tell you what I think this is about. Let me read a little of this article that just came out yesterday, because Trump had said that he was going to take it over beginning on midnight, 12 a.m. Saturday morning, I guess. So let me read this. This is from the AP. Headline, the nation's capital waits for Trump's next move as a takeover threat looms. Around 2 a.m., noisy revelers emerged from clubs and bars, packed the sidewalks of U Street in Washington, many of them seeking a late-night slice of falafel. A robust but not unusual contingent of city police cruisers. Why'd they go with just falafel? Is that they were all looking for falafels? That's just weird. A robust but not unusual contingent of city police cruisers lingered around the edges of the crowds. At other late-night hot spots, oh, I guess maybe it was this, whatever, falafels. Other late-night hot spots, nearly identical scenes unfolded. What wasn't apparent in Friday's earliest hours, any sort of security lockdown by a multi-agency flood of uniformed federal law enforcement officers. That's what President Donald Trump, authoritarian thug criminal piece of shit, Donald Trump had promised Thursday, starting at midnight. Or I guess maybe it was supposed to be Friday, 12 a.m. In the administration's latest move to impose its will on the nation's capital. In short, that law enforcement surge to take control of the District of Columbia's streets did not appear to unfold on schedule. A 2-hour city tour starting around 1 a.m. Friday revealed no overt or visible law enforcement presence other than members of the Metropolitan Police Department, the city's police force. That still might change in the coming evenings as Trump puts into action his long-standing plans to take over a capital city he has repeatedly slammed as unsafe, filthy, and badly run. According to his Thursday declaration, the security lockdown would run for 7 days, with the option to extend as needed. In an online post Saturday, the Republican authoritarian thug criminal piece of shit said the Democratic-led city would soon be one of the country's safest, and he announced a White House news conference for Monday, though he offered no details. So he threatened a federal takeover beginning Friday at midnight. Didn't happen. He didn't do it. Then on Saturday, he updated his threat, and he posted this on Truth Social. On Monday, a press conference will be held at the White House, which will essentially stop violent crime in Washington, D.C. It has become one of the most dangerous cities anywhere in the world. It will soon be one of the safest. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Yeah, fuck you. Here's what I think's going on. I think there are two things at work here. First, let's deal with the authoritarian dictator part of this. I think that this could, because lots of things that Donald Trump does, it's almost never for the stated reasons. This has nothing to do with crime or reducing crime in the city of Washington. It has nothing to do with that. Because there are other cities that he could make the same argument about, right? So why isn't he going in there? I mean, the Constitution doesn't prohibit him. No courts are going to stop him. I mean, he sent, illegally and unconstitutionally sent the military into Los Angeles. So why not send federal law enforcement into Chicago or Baltimore or whatever? Why Washington, D.C.? Well, a couple of reasons. It has nothing to do with crime. I think this is about further laying the groundwork for something worse to come later. Because the question is, too, I mean, this article assumes that it would be, this AP article makes it sound like they assume it will be federal law enforcement. Well, what agency? They refer to multi-agency force. Well, what agencies? Are we talking federal law enforcement agencies? Is it going to be the FBI? What other agencies are going to be involved here? ICE? The thugs at ICE? What's it going to be? Or is it going to be the military? We don't know. But whatever it is, and I think this might be a reason Trump would want to use the military here. I think this is a test run. He's constantly pushing here and there to see what he can get away with. And this could be, if he sends the feds in, whether federal law enforcement or the military, into Washington to take it over, at least the law enforcement function, take that over. By the way, if it's just a law enforcement function, that wouldn't technically be martial law. Of course, it's not martial law if he's using federal law enforcement, but if he uses the military, martial law means something specific. I get this a lot. Martial law is when the military replaces civilian government. And not just law enforcement, but supplants the civilian government. Anyway, I don't want to get off on that tangent. I'm sure there'll be many, many more opportunities to talk about martial law in the future with this authoritarian thug criminal piece of shit in the White House. Anyway, I think this could be just further testing to see what he can get away with and conditioning the American people to accept Donald Trump sending federal law enforcement and or military into states and cities to take them over to whatever degree, to varying degrees, I guess. And why Washington, D.C.? Because there's no legal impediment to him doing so. Washington, D.C. is a federal district. So he can take over, essentially, Washington, D.C., and there's no legal or constitutional prohibition against him doing so. He can even send the military in there very, very easily. There's no state. You know, we have the Insurrection Act, right? Which Donald Trump is just itching to use. Parts of the Insurrection Act require a state governor or legislature to ask the president to send in the military. And to do so without their permission or their request, and without certain circumstances existing, it's illegal for him to use the military. And so when he sends the military into different states, there's legal and constitutional impediments to that. Not that they really matter much to this criminal thug. He doesn't really care about the Constitution. But in the city of Washington, D.C., there is no such impediment. There is no state. It is already a federal territory. It's a federal district. So he can easily go in there. But most Americans don't understand the legal distinction between a federal district and a state. So if Donald Trump can go in there with the military, which he can, as awful as that would be, because Washington, D.C., although it's a federal district as opposed to a state, it doesn't look any different to the American people. If there's pictures on TV of the military going through the streets of Washington, D.C., that looks no different than the military going through the streets of Baltimore or Washington or New York or fucking Topeka. Well, not they don't need to go to Topeka. It's a red state. So, wherever. So by picking Washington, D.C. to demonstrate, to take it over and control it, that conditions the American people to see images of that on TV. And like I said, there's no difference in seeing those images of them going through the streets of Washington, D.C. versus them going through the streets of Chicago. And if they accepted it and there was no huge backlash to that happening in Washington, D.C., well, then why would there be if I send them into Chicago or anywhere else? So that's number one. This could be just part of testing and conditioning the American people to accept his taking over states and cities with the military at some point in the future. So that's the first thing I think that's going on here. But secondly, and this second Truth Social post in my mind proves this point, it is, again, about Epstein. It's about Epstein. just like everything else he has done in the last month. It's been about changing the subject from Epstein. I mean, why is he doing this now? He could have done this 3 months ago, 3 months from now. Why now? Because he's still desperately trying to change the subject from Epstein. Just like this, his meeting with Putin, as I talked about in yesterday's video. Because Zelensky already said, look, I'm not going along with any fucking bullshit deal you two come up with. So it's dead on arrival. So what's the point of having a meeting setting out terms that Zelensky is not going to accept? You already know that in advance. He's not going to accept it. So why do it? It's about changing the subject from Epstein. And so too is this. And I believe that this Truth Social post gives it away. Because remember, he originally announced that he was going to do this starting at midnight on Friday, but it didn't happen. And I think it's because his threat to do it starting on midnight on Friday didn't get enough press coverage. It didn't change the subject, because that's what that was designed to do also. It was supposed to change the subject from Epstein, but it didn't. So now he's trying to draw more attention to it, and now he's going to have a press conference to announce it. Well, that's probably more likely to get more press coverage and maybe change the subject and distract from Epstein than his Thursday post on Truth Social. Because if he had just quietly dispatched some federal law enforcement officers in there to assist Washington Metro PD with police presence, that's not going to get much news. Just to quietly and effectively do the job, that's not what it's about. It's about distraction. It's about getting the attention, distracting the media from Epstein. So he has to make a big thing about it. He's got to make a big deal about it. He has to have a press conference. And I bet in that press conference, he's going to say things to intentionally, get people really angry about it, to change the subject. The more angry the left gets, the more angry the press gets, the more they're going to talk about this, which plays exactly into Trump's hands. He wants you to get angry about this because it distracts from what he doesn't want you to talk about, which is Epstein. And the fact that he didn't just quietly put law enforcement on the streets starting at midnight on Friday, but instead said, I had to hell with that, let's do a press conference on Monday. That tells you that this is not about effective law enforcement. This is about spectacle. This is about trying to grab attention and distract attention from Epstein and put it on this. He would much rather have people be up in arms accusing him of being a dictatorial thug. He would much rather us be saying that, because he's in no danger of losing the Fox News audience and his cult by being an authoritarian thug. They love that. They eat that shit up. So he's not going to suffer politically at all from that. He suffers politically by the continued focus on Epstein. So the more angry that everyone else in the country may get, as long as the Trump cult loves it, and they would love Trump taking over Washington, D.C., taking over Chicago, they would just love it. They would love to see Trump just use the military against American citizens. There is not, he cannot possibly go too far in that regard for the Trump cult. They will always love that. They want dictatorship. And the more angry you get about it, remember, the MAGA cult, one of the things that animates them the most is owning the libs. So if you get angry and the press gets angry, they love that even more. And they will love Trump even more for doing it. So this is a win-win for him. He gets to push the boundaries. He gets to condition the American people to accept increased federal law enforcement, whether that's through the, ICE or whatever thug federal agency he dispatches, or even the military. He wants those images of troops potentially walking through the streets of Washington, D.C. to condition the American people, but then he also wants the distraction from Epstein. That's what this is all about. At least that's what I think. Anyway, this is what happens when you elect an authoritarian thug, criminal piece of shit. Anyway, thanks for watching. Talk to you again soon.